My name is Lee Cloncher. We're here today with another edition of the Battles of the Giant series. In this one, we'll be talking about a little bit about the development of the International Harvester 30 and 50 series. These drawings are from 1976, and International Harvester at that time really needed a new model. And one of the things they started working on was the design of their next all-new top-of-the-line tractor. Roger, can you tell us a little bit about the market need at that time and
Uh,
what
I
they were
think
developing?
I think if we look at what Harvester needed with a new tractor, is we needed to disband ourselves from the old torque amplifier, the way the tractors had been built since the '06 series days. That powertrain, we needed a new powertrain. Along with that, we needed some new styling, some innovation. We needed to get the cab, the control center, as we referred to it, updated so that customers felt as a modern tractor should feel for them.
And in this machine, the styling was really cutting edge. Your transmission was brand new. We're going to go into a little more detail about that in a bit. This was one of the early concepts showing the TR4, which is what they called it before it became the model numbers we know them as today, next to the old line, very radical looking. Greg Montgomery did that drawing, and the drawing or did that design. The drawings we see are Greg's. Um, there was two machines that were new, and we were just talking about how different those two machines were. So you had the 30 series and the 50 series, and this is that beautiful new 3688. Roger, tell us about the differences between first about what made the 30 series unique, and then we'll talk about the 50 series.
I think when we look at what the 30 series had to offer, and the 30 series became, it was really, there was a 3088, a 3288, a 3488, and 3688. The 3488 was the hydro itself, where the other units carried the same basic powertrain that we had with the 86 series tractors. There were some improvements that were made in the transmission to ease shifting a little bit on the unit. And of course, these tractors all picked up what we're talking about with the 50 series, the forward airflow, the new styling looks on the tractor, and the new cab and the arrangements that we had within the cab. This kind of tied together the entire product line. So starting with the lower horsepower all the way up through the 50 series.
Great. And do you know, was the transmission, I assume they ran out of money, is why they didn't put an upgraded transmission on them. Was the idea that these would be lower cost machines than the 50s?
Yes, I think what we were looking for is a lower cost unit. Likewise, the transmission, when we went go to the 50 series, it became heavier. So the old tractor became heavier. So I think what you were doing is you were looking for a little lighter weight tractor at the time. And if we look at where the economy was at the time, it wasn't good. When you deal with the 30 and the 3288, uh, these were kind of price tractors to work in that market at that time, in my belief, anyway.
What about the power plants? Were the power
Okay,
plants
when we look
different?
at the power plant, these units came in with the 300 and 400 series engines, just like the big brothers in the 50 series. However, what these tractors were is they were all naturally aspirated engines, so no turbos on the unit. So the tractor was virtually taking what we had with the 86 series and bringing those tractors and modernizing them at the time so that we had a new complete tractor line. This kind of linked everything together and gave us two powertrains that we could work with the customers. Of
Yep.
course, the customers were still looking for that power shift.
Yeah, you're right. That was the holy grail. Um, was the what about the hydraulics? We talked about the really robust hydraulic package on the 50 series. Did the 30 series get a similar upgrade?
The smaller units, the 30 and 3288, carried the old open center type hydraulic system, where the 34 and the 36 88. Those models carried the pressure flow compensating systems, or the PFC hydraulic systems, were placed on the units. These tractors were great tractors for the guys to use, and became an all-around tractor. There was a lot of the 30 and 32 88s that were sold. Simply, I believe a lot dealt with price at the time.
Sure.
The 30 series tractors all carried the dual shaft PTO. So you had a 540 small 1,000 RPM PTO on the tractor, which gave the versatility, especially in the choring tractors for running, let's say, hay equipment, mowers, things of that nature. You had flexibility where you could go to the small PTO shaft or the 540 PTO shaft. The 50 series is the one that retained or got the new transmission. And with the new transmission, what we did is we eliminated the torque amplifier out of the unit. You came in with a 6-speed range transmission. It had a high-low. So when you shifted the transmission, you went from a high to a low, or from an odd to an even, and your gears were stair-stepped all the way up. And you had 3 ranges, low, medium, and high. So your gears were sequential with approximately a 17% speed change from one gear to the next.
How many gears did you have that you could shift on the fly? Was it 6 in each range, or how
Yeah,
many?
you could shift all 6 gears on the fly within each range. The quadrant was designed so that if you started in first, you shifted over to second. It automatically, when you would shift down, you'd go into third, you go into fourth. So you were working through synchronizers from the main gear, and then you went through a high-low, which was a hydraulic clutch pack that shifted from one side to the other.
So this tractor not only had a new transmission, it had a new hydraulic system and a pretty radically different clutch. Roger, can you explain those two
Yeah.
features?
When we deal with the clutch, the tractor was with the Synchro Tri 6 transmission. What we did is we moved the master clutch away from behind the engine, or directly onto the flywheel, and it became mid mount. So it was mounted between the speed and the range transmission. And what it does is it allows the speed transmission to take the high speed and the inertia coming off the engine, and then you come back down into your master clutch before it goes into the range transmission. The master clutch was a larger diameter clutch unit. It was a wet clutch, and it allowed for easy feathering of the tractor. It had great control of the tractor from an operator's point of view. As a matter of fact, the master clutch is still mid-mounted on the Magnum tractors today. We had gone to PFC hydraulics, and with PFC hydraulics, pressure flow compensated. What happened is on the 88 series, when we introduced those, you were dealing with piston pumps. And with the piston pumps, we did not have a charge system on the unit. So therefore, especially in colder weather, the piston pump was asked to draw fluid into the chamber. And with the piston, you got leakage, etc. We used the thermal bypass valve on those tractors. So when we came out with the 50 series tractor, what we did is we placed a charge pump. So you had a 25, 28 gallon, I don't remember the actual number, but it was somewhere in that range. And that pump was dedicated for the hitch and the remotes. And you had about a 30-gallon charge pump that fed this pump. So you always had flow available to the pump so that the pump could produce the flow and the pressure required to do the job. So that was a major, major hurdle that we had that was negative on the 86 series and the 2+2 88 series tractors when they first came out. Likewise, there was a gear pump that was used to control the tractor. So the gear pump fed the transmission, it fed steering, it fed your brakes. So you had a lot of flows combined that come together. I believe if you go back through some of the old advertisement, they come up and they say, well, we had an output of somewhere in the neighborhood of like 80 gallons of hydraulic flow. What they were doing is adding all these together. What you had is approximately 25, 28 gallons something like that that was dedicated to both the hitch and the remotes, which gave us great hydraulic flow and pressures at that point in time.
Yeah. You said this the 50 series hydraulic system was actually more robust than the very early Magnum systems. It was so good, right?
Correct. If you look at what happened is when we came out with the original 7100 series Magnum tractors, we used the piston pump to feed both the hitch and remotes, and also it fed the tractor assembly itself. So it fed all the functions that the tractor needs, brakes, clutches, etc. And on the Magnum tractor, the piston pump ended up feeding all of those components initially. So therefore, you didn't have as great a flow available at the couplers.
Great. That's super helpful. And certainly it seemed like hydraulic demands had been increasing for farm equipment since the 50s. And it feels to me like this was the one where you guys caught up and got, all right, we've got the system the times need. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that would be because we paralleled or exceeded competition at that point with a pressure flow system. If we look at what Deere was using, Deere had a high pressure system on their units. So yeah, we were very, very comparable. So we could run orbital motors and things of that nature with without major hassles like we had experienced when you ran it before.
So you guys have the brand new tractor you've been looking for as a company for years and years.
A product line like this, a launch like this, a development like this brought a lot of good people together. And I think Vaughn mentioned it, or Roger. I mean, it was a celebration, obviously, for dealers and customers. But when you think about a lot of us that have been with each other for 40 some years, and maybe they took a little different path, but still within the industry, it made it worthwhile.
Well, one of the most exciting or excited people that I remember at that time was our dear friend Bud Ewell. He
Yeah.
thought this was like the second coming. I mean,
Yeah.
this was everything he had dreamed of, and more. So that's a good gauge on what was happening.
Well, this has been a great conversation. This is one of the, seminal machines in IH history. Really appreciate you guys all being here. This has been great.
Good job, Lee. Thanks for inviting us.
I enjoyed it. It was a good time.
Great new number one. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, guys.